Good news, today is finally Halloween for real. Sad news, it's also a Monday, which means this is the final Schlocktober episode for 2016. Which, for those of you who've been down this road before, know that means you may have to wait 2, possibly 3 whole weeks before I find another excuse to do an episode on weird-ass old movies. In any case, we'll get through it. And one thing that'll probably help us is that we're also less than a week away from the release of Marvel's Doctor Strange. Our only big superhero movie of the season, our last one, period, for a shockingly long stretch of months considering how out of control the proliferation of this particular genre is supposed to be, and if we're being honest, looking a lot better than anybody could have hoped for a fucking Doctor Strange movie to look, however you feel about the comics. The fact is, Doctor Strange was always going to be a hard nut to crack because the whole thing is so goddamn bizarre, even though when you think about it, Hollywood has historically made a lot more movies about wizards than they have about superheroes. But believe it or not, this is the third time Marvel has tried to make this franchise happen. Now I imagine the sort of person who's watching this show is familiar with the rather terrible 1978 movie version starring Peter Hooton, but there's also a second chapter to the story. You see, for whatever reason, Marvel, and supposedly Stan Lee in particular, always seemed to think that Doctor Strange was one of their top candidates for a mainstream crossover appeal, and they never stopped pursuing a live-action movie. For years, the rights to make one were held by Charles Band, the legendary B-movie mega-producer, whose family operation Full Moon Video utterly dominated the direct-to-VHS era and was recently reborn as pretty much the Netflix of schlock. Unfortunately, by the time Band and Company had scraped together the components to actually make Doctor Strange, their license had expired and Marvel was thinking they could get more money for it elsewhere. Spoiler, they didn't, hence why this is one of the movies they aren't required to hook up with Sony, Fox, or Universal to make. So, in a reaction that typifies how and why the Band family has survived and thrived for so long in this business, Charles decided, fuck it, Full Moon will just change the names and details around and make the goddamn movie anyway. And thus was born Dr. Mordrid. Yes, Dr. Mordrid is basically an unlicensed Doctor Strange fan film. Reanimator's Jeffrey Combs has the lead as Anton Mordrid, a respected doctor who is secretly a powerful sorcerer who has a magic amulet, lives in a secret sanctum in New York full of magical artifacts, monitors the world for evil, travels to alternate dimensions, answers to a powerful cosmic entity, battles a fellow student of magic turned arch-nemesis, and is charged with protecting the mortal realm from incursion by demonic forces. In other words, if they had Disney's lawyers to throw around back then, Marvel probably could have sued them over this shit and won. I mean, he even does the astral projection thing. Now, to be fair, there are some differences. Mordrid is a doctor of occult history instead of a surgeon. He's actually a centuries-old extra-dimensional being himself instead of a powered-up human. The center of all things mystic is in the other dimension instead of Tibet. Eternity is now called the Monitor, and Mordrid and our Baron Mordo analog Cabal were students together as kids instead of as adults. Oh, and no beard and the cape is blue.
Monitor, contact me.
I am here.
On the other hand, given that comic book movies of this era routinely made massive changes to everything, even in officially licensed adaptations, it's not hard to imagine that Full Moon's official Doctor Strange movie would have still been just exactly this, but with the proper character names. Or hell, maybe even just the one. Anyway, as our story begins, Mordrid has been keeping watch over Earth for well over a century, concealing his identity and funding his work as both resident and secret landlord of the apartment building where his sanctuary is kept.
She's right, Edgar. 100 years ago, this was a nice place to live.
But he's just starting to come out of his shell thanks to the curious advances of police consultant Samantha, played by Yvette Napar.
Please, make yourself comfortable.
God, this is incredible.
How do you like your coffee?
Black's fine. These volumes are amazing.
Oh, thank you. I've been collecting them for a long time.
Unfortunately, things are cut short when Mordrid's archenemy Cabal, the Death's Head, escapes from his extra-dimensional prison and comes to Earth.
Cabal.
See for yourself. He killed him. I don't know how many during his escape. The last thing I saw was a firestorm he conjured up.
Looking to steal various elements and artifacts of alchemy in order to frame Mordrid for murder, which will buy him time to weave a world-dominating spell by locating, what else, the Philosopher's Stone.
The crystals of Endor. It will take more than that.
I have more.
I should think so. You've had over 100 Earth years to prepare for this.
He also recruits a pair of wannabe Satanists to be his assistants, which he doesn't really seem to need, except it helps add more scenes with different combinations of characters interacting, and that makes the movie feel bigger than it actually is, pro tip for low-budget filmmakers, and add some nudity, because otherwise this would basically be a kids movie and you don't want direct-to-video customers to feel like they're putting up with limited production value without getting something in exchange. Anyway, Samantha helps Mordrid escape and use astral projection to confront Cabal at the museum where the Philosopher's Stone turns out to be on display.
Man, they sure were giants.
I remember them being much bigger.
Dickhead. Alex, you can't say that.
And here we finally get a clever original twist on a wizard's duel.
I thought as much. You realize you have no power over me in this state?
No, but I can cast a spell.
Yeah, alright, that's what I'm talking about. Right down to stop-motion animation legend David Allen bringing those prehistoric skeletons to life. That's the good stuff. In fact, by now you're thinking, okay, the movie's really cooking. Mordrid will lose this end of Act 2 midpoint battle, maybe to save Sam, or because Cabal has a hidden trump card we didn't know about. He'll go off and put his master plan into motion. Mordrid and Samantha will race to stop him, perhaps with her showing her mettle by providing a key element of the final plan, all culminating in a satisfying blowout finale where... or not. Yeah, no, that's really it. Mordrid kills Cabal with the skeleton tusk, they mop up the one remaining henchman, there's a weird fake-out E.T. moment where Mordrid has to leave Earth for some reason, but then he comes back in time for Christmas, and to tease out sequels that would never be.
Well, wherever they send me, I'll need some help. Somebody I can trust.
I'll do my best.
Good. But first, we have to have a little eggnog.
Weird, right? I mean, it technically tells a complete story, but it feels like it stops just when it should be getting started. It's not like the movie is too long, either. It's only 74 minutes, and that lack of a strong finish probably explains more than anything why the same studio that made 10 Puppet Master movies, 5 Trancers, and even a crossover between Dollman and Demonic Toys somehow never felt compelled to make even one more movie about Dr. Mordrid. Still, this is a charming, low-tech little movie in its own right, and in 1992, easily the best anyone could have hoped for from an actual Doctor Strange movie. It has a good score, the design work for Mordrid's costume and the layout of his inner sanctum is especially rich and detailed, with a clear level of effort and care being put in. If you know your Full Moon movies, you know Charles Band was always eager to turn even the most limited horror premise into a sprawling comic book mini-epic stuffed with lore, continuity, crossovers, and goofy world-building, so it's fun to see him and his crew start from that point for a change.
I wish you well.
I took an oath. And when the time comes, I'll meet the death's head and beat it back.
Plus, the cast is all delightfully in on the joke, especially Combs, who really needs to get himself into the actual Marvel movies at some point, because he's always good in this stuff, and here it's nice to see him play a good guy for a change who constantly seems like the coolest dude in the room, but also somehow the biggest dork on the planet.
You didn't win!
So that's Dr. Mordrid, aka the fake Doctor Strange. Will the real thing do it better? We'll find out soon enough. If you're not already following my film reviews over at geek.com, now would probably be the time. I hope you enjoyed Schlocktober 2016. Check back here next week for something else that'll probably be pretty good too.